don't know why, but to make sure everybody had the most productive life possible. So as I mentioned, I've been hovering around in the background, trying to ensure your lives are as productive as possible, trying to find the ideal partner for you, the ideal occupation, a state of tranquility and success, enabling you to live as long as possible. But as is evident, I've not been totally successful. But I've been trying, and I continue to try. So that's the role I see. As to my response to having been at the school, I see it increasingly as being very important, but for often unexpected reasons, and particular friendships, particular teachers. And I would like to thank Stephen Gard as well, because he's been hovering in the background, ensuring that we are all connected and continue on, and we have the greatest opportunity to learn from our school experience. I found the physical structure of the school fairly confronting. It seemed to be Russian Stalag type architecture. I'm reading back, I found that the problem with the pool continues. As far as I'm aware, the pool was emptied in 1967. It was still empty of water in 2007. I don't know about today.
It's filled in.
It's been filled in. So, well, what do I feel? And well, apart from the building, most of the teachers and the curriculum had very little impact on me. It was other things that we learnt at that time. And I guess just to summarise, of the teachers that I remember most was Bob Booth, and I think he's been recognised with a room of memorabilia, or a little museum named after him. There was another teacher called Mary Dick. Now, I have not been able to find much about her since, but she had a big impact on me, and certainly on others, and some others in particular. But I just mentioned that she was a teacher who really taught English, certain relevant aspects of English, to a much deeper level, often after school. And that had a big impact. And the other teacher who had a big impact was Philip Langshaw. Does anybody remember Philip Langshaw? Because he was relatively young, although he was born in 38, so he was 13 years older, but he was still only, I guess, in his late 20s when he was at the school. And he lived nearby, and he had a wonderful voice. And I remember we persuaded him to sing in the classroom once, and it just filled the room. It was just so powerful. It lifted the building out of its foundations. I don't know, Paul Brown mentions when we cycled. Do you remember a cycling trip where he was holidaying in Cooma?
I do.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We had this amazing trip. I don't know if he expected to see us, but I think he had a distinctive Volkswagen, and we knew where he was when we hit Cooma. We had cycled down, and they knocked on his door, and he opened the door. He was there with his partner, I think, and he was very accommodating. I think we stayed with him, and I think he drove us back to Sydney. That was quite amazing. But since then, my inquiries have found that he really achieved quite a powerful continuing career in music, in classical music. He was a baritone, he became a bass. He moved to Germany in 1972, became a professor of music. He's a performer, he's been recorded, and as far as I know, he's still alive and still performing. And I'm just so impressed by that. He, for whatever reason, he had a big impact on me. I might mention the cycling aspect because Paul and myself, and I'm going to include Alan Owen and Graham Young, and there may have been others, we did some amazing bike rides. And then I continued to cycle, so cycling became part of my life, and I can trace that back to school. And before school, because both my parents were cyclists in the 40s and 50s, and I was using my father's bike, which was heavy and reconditioned, and as Alan Owen would say, because there was a bike shop on Hurstville Road, you may not know this, But anyway, and it was run by a gentleman called Mr. Bates, or as Alan would say, Master Bates. And for whatever reason, but we had Alan Owen was a club rider and had a very smart racing bike, and I was very impressed by that. And we went on some wonderful journeys. Just let me conclude, or begin to conclude, with some reflections on Alan Owen, because we've mentioned people who have died along the way, and I'm just thinking about people that I knew at school who left a mark. Paul Brown is one, because we did the cycling, and you really get to know people well, and you get to know about their ideas, their philosophy, even at a young age. And I have some idea what Paul has been doing over the years. I'd like to know much more about it, but I just say that I'm very impressed with his activities, his profession, his interest, his passion for the indigenous people of this continent and the ecology of this continent. But I just wanted to say something about Alan Owen, because he had a huge impact on me, and I guess we can probably all think of people that did have an impact, and perhaps friendships were formed and they continue to flourish 60 years later. But I knew Alan quite well, and we were cycling. But the particular thing is that in the year or two after he left school, I was doing medicine, and I used to see him, and he was into thinking deeply, philosophy, and he left me with a couple of documents which influenced my attitude to medicine. One was by the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. So he was talking about the fundamental needs of medicine being in the way we live and the way we treat each other. And that got into my psyche before the institutional conditioning of medicine got in. So I was always thinking along those lines, and I've got that document here, I still have it, that he gave me, and it's in the same plastic folder with to Jonathan on it. He also, number two, he sent me a report. There was a very unpleasant surgeon called Harry Bailey. Now you wouldn't know him, but Alan got really obsessed. Harry Bailey was what was called in the 60s a psychosurgeon. He used to operate on people's brains if they had refractory depression. And he had a hospital that he used called the Chelmsford Hospital. And Alan was just obsessed with that. And there was a report, he sent it to me, he was involved in the media and doing everything he could to expose this guy, who was in the end exposed and shut down and I think jailed. And the final thing, I've got it here. Yes, he came round to my place in 1976. I just had a son. I was married at the time, and he left, and I think maybe he came for a birthday. Anyway, he brought that book. So I've had that book since 1976. I read it frequently. It's called Fungus the Bogeyman. And identify with fungus because this is, because it's like there are all these other realms. Within this world, there are realms of various creatures and humanoid people, and these are really quite friendly. And identify with them because fungus the bogeyman lives deep in caverns under the ground, and they come up during the night, and if they kiss you on the forehead, you wake up with a pimple. And before they go to bed, they would hose their beds down with cold water because they like it cold and slimy. So thanks, Alan, because that book is very dear to me. And I really thank Alan for influencing the way I see the world and the way I practice, and hopefully the way I engage with people. Thank you, Stephen, for all you do, and continue to do. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Yeah.